things that I've done in the past 2 months that align with who I want to be, and asking myself in each moment, um, does this bring me closer to the person that I want to be? And I think, okay, so those things are working on writing my book, practicing and diving into fabric and just like exploring in all ways that I can, experimenting again with pottery. Um, let's see. Oh, learning how to like run and like exercise physically outside of just like yoga and like asana practice. And I think all of these things contribute, but I'm at this moment right now where it feels like none of those things are working. Like, it feels like all of the things and habits that I've put into place in order to keep me grounded and alive and happy, kind of that, those core things that I do in my life, um, it kind of just feels like nothing's working. And I'm kind of in this state of overwhelm, which I think a lot of people probably are experiencing. And I think how that's showing up for me is that my like core self-care practices um, are feeling like they're not working. And so it feels like I'm like overwhelmed, and nothing that I have practiced previously is able to like right, like pull me back down. Um, and I'm still kind of like navigating my way through that. But I think it kind of relates to what I was talking about last week, in that like when we dive into like an internal practice and try to establish healthy habits internally, and like how we talk about ourselves in our head and how we talk about what we want, and just like noticing those things, like if I'm having a thought of like, ugh, I could never afford that, or like I could never do that, or I would never deserve that, like those things, catching those moments that I say that in my head and being like, whoa, 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 I don't agree with that, and those habitual practices that take months to years to like retrain your brain how to think about your life and your experience, um, is a lot of really intense internal work. And I'm in this moment where nothing is externally validating all of the work that I'm doing, which is a really interesting lesson to be sitting in, because I have most of my life relied on external um, validations to know if I'm going in the right direction, right? Like, I need an external validation to tell me that I'm loved, and I need an external validation to tell me that's the way you should be going, right? Like the breadcrumbs. And I think I'm at this moment where like I normally follow the external breadcrumbs and end up in a situation, and then I learn what I need to learn, and then I move to the next one, and then I learn what I need to learn, and move on. And I'm in this moment where the external breadcrumbs kind of stopped, because I'm in this moment of telling myself and learning that the external validation doesn't matter as much as the internal validation does. And it's so interesting to walk the current like limbo feeling space that I'm in, because having relied on external validation my whole life to tell me if I'm doing the right thing, or if, you know, like if somebody likes my art, then I keep making that art, and like that kind of thing. Then when I don't get any external validation, even though I'm making something so artistically, if I make something and nobody says, oh my god, this is amazing, then like I would probably in the past have been like, okay, next. And now I'm kind of like, what can I do and what can I make that other people are like weirded out by? Like, not in like a weird way, but just like, so that like it's like when somebody does say that, I'm like, fuck yeah, you're my people. You see it, you get it, you feel me. Versus like, oh, thank you, I was worried I wasn't doing the right thing. Right? Like, those are two very different energies. But the path to getting there has been losing all of my external validation and having no external guidance for in my reality for like which direction to walk, right? And I've kind of just been learning to experiment with like, what do I want to do? Which works sometimes, but then there are days where I don't want to do anything. And it's like, okay, how many days in a row can I not want to do anything? And is that actually what I want? Is that do I actually not want to be doing anything? And I think those are the questions I'm kind of like asking myself in the past week, because my motivation like fizzled out to nothing. And I'm like, is that really what I want? I really don't want to be doing anything. And I sit down to write my book and I'm like, I don't really want to be doing this. And then I like cook some, start cooking a nice meal and I'm like, I don't really want to be doing this. Like, then I go to my art studio and I'm like, I don't really want to be doing anything. And to a certain degree, like, I want to embrace that part of myself, but I also know that like not doing anything doesn't feel in alignment either. So I'm kind of like, okay, is that like not wanting to do anything an external perception? Like, am I just like, am I actually feeling that in my body, or am I just feeling overwhelmed or tired? And instead of doing nothing, like, even though like the self-care practices that I've put into place that typically keep me really grounded and really like in my space, if those aren't working and I don't want to be doing anything, is that my experience? Because I'm like, I want to be creating, but I just kind of can't. And like, I want to be writing my book and I can sit down, and I have started to in the past couple days actually sit down and do a little bit more writing, and that's felt really good. I'm not trying to like write for like 3 hours like I was before, because that's just like not where I'm at right now. And I'm taking a lot more like breaks. So instead of being like, okay, I need to go to my art studio for my 8 hours or my 6 hours or whatever it is that day, I'm like, okay, well, what if I go for like 1 hour, and if I don't feel like doing anything, I could like tinker around with different projects until I find something that I'm finding joy in. And I think it's this moment of like connecting the pieces of like, what do I find joy in, and can I find joy in not doing anything, and can I find joy in boredom? But I think for me right now, I think it's not boredom. I think it's just like overwhelm, and in which case, like, not doing anything is actually exacerbating the issue. And I'm kind of in this moment of like, oh my, like, what do I do? And I don't even know if I'm even describing it properly, but there are weeks where everything seems to be going right, even though things are falling apart or whatever. And then eventually there's this moment of like, oh yeah, okay, my whole life is falling apart, and the only coping mechanisms I've developed are like lighting candles. And not to diminish, I'm not trying to diminish like the things that normally work for me, but I'm in this moment where it feels like I need some sort of like more to like care for myself. And I think it's because I'm finally realizing and understanding that external validation is not the breadcrumbs that I should be following, and I should be following internal validation. And so in the moment between where I don't quite know what my internal validation actually feels like, I think I needed to lose all external validation in order to force myself to acknowledge my internal validation. And I don't know how long it's gonna last or if that's even what's happening, but this week has just been really weird for me. And I know the astrology is like the nodes are changing signs, which I don't know much about the nodes, but yeah, it's just like I'm also towards the end of my Saturn return by just having turned 30, and just thinking about the last like 2 or 3 years of my life, and like the things that went right, the things that went wrong, the things that motivated me, like the things that brought me joy, the things that brought me sadness, like just kind of like looking back and examining my life. And I don't know, it's kind of been a trip, honestly. And if anyone out there is also experiencing something similar, I'd love to chat. If anyone has any advice and has been here before, I would also love to chat. But yeah, I don't know, it's just, it's like, I'm like, have I been delusional in just thinking that my self-care practices and becoming the person that I want to be is actually like a thing? Like, I don't know, I'm like, I don't know how to describe that, but I would say this week has been the hardest to do the 5 minutes a day of meditation, and like because it feels like my self-care practices aren't working, I have kind of like taken a step back from like putting so much importance on them, which I think also has kind of like exacerbated this like overwhelming experience that I'm having. But yeah, this week's been hard for sure.